Hey everyone, this is Exploring Fiction, and welcome back to another video. So this video might be a little bit longer than any of my previous videos, but I'm not really sure, so let's just get right into it. So today I just wanted to talk about how I thought the Falcon and the Winter Soldier was really a bad show. So I have outlined 8 reasons that I believe this to be true, and let's get right into it. So first, I still dislike the idea of Sam getting the shield over Bucky, especially since Bucky has known Steve longer and shared many more important moments with him as compared to Sam. So I know that it was all in the comics about Sam Wilson getting the shield and taking up the mantle of Captain America, but I always felt that with how the MCU worked out, with Steve Rogers and Bucky Barnes being shown to be best friends from the start, and Steve even able to help redeem Bucky from his dark path as the Winter Soldier, I always thought that that friendship would never be topped, even by a friendship that was well established with Steve and Sam. And so I thought that, if anything, Steve should hand the shield off to Bucky. And I know some complaints would be about how Bucky wouldn't stand up well in the public eye as Captain America, but I think that could have made for a very interesting story about how an ex-criminal and one of the most dangerous and wanted men in the world suddenly was given the mantle of Captain America, and how maybe he had to deal with his past in that way from both sides, the criminal underworld and the governments of the world seemingly being against him. But no, instead we got Sam Wilson. My second point here is that it felt like Bucky barely did anything in the show. So, like I said, I really enjoyed Bucky's arc in the Captain America trilogy. It felt like his character was really someone quite special to Steve. And I love how he died in the heat of battle for Steve. And then when he came back alive and evil, he immediately had doubts because of Steve once they met again, and eventually turned back to good because of Steve, and Steve defended him all throughout Civil War. Now, of course, Bucky didn't have too much to do in Infinity War and then Endgame, but I mean, can you really blame any of the directors and writers behind those movies? I mean, as compared to someone like Thanos or Scarlet Witch or the Guardians of the Galaxy or Thor, Bucky's just a guy with a metal arm and a lot of guns. So I understand why he couldn't do too much in those movies, and I just wanted to see a return to the Bucky we knew. But again, it just felt like he was here to banter with Sam a little bit and provide backup for Sam while he took the spotlight. My third point here is that the only character I liked was John Walker, and I was supposed to hate him. And I'll give a little disclaimer here. I guess I liked Zemo too, but really John Walker was the main driving force for me. So the moment he steps on screen at the end of the first episode, we're supposed to hate him because this was Steve Rogers' shield and mantle, and who was this guy to take it up for him instead of Sam? And I'll admit, when I first saw him, I was very doubtful and a little bit angry that we were seeing someone else in the suit. But honestly, that's the beginning of that second episode really just brought me closer to the character of John Walker, and I never looked back. I thought throughout the show, John Walker was the most empathetic character. You see his frustrations with trying to live up to Captain America, Steve Rogers, and the example he set. And you can see that as a war hero, he was beloved until he got put in some very bad circumstances, which caused him to fall out of the public eye. And I just thought that John Walker, he just showed what it would be like to try and walk in the footsteps of Steve Rogers very well, and I just loved everything about his character. And of course, Zemo kind of became a meme, but I also liked him a lot too in the show, even though he wasn't in it as much as I thought he would be. So my fourth point here is that Carly and the Flag Smashers were terrible villains with what I believe to be a terrible ideology. Now, I did hear some rumors about how there's supposed to be a virus plotline instead of the Flag Smashers, but obviously, because of certain world events, they had to cut that. But I just think Carly and the Flag Smashers were terrible. I mean, what was their saying? One world, one people. They were very globalistic in that way, and I think that's a very naive and disingenuous worldview, thinking that just because of the blip, everyone should be able to come back together and live as one world, and that people who took up residence, let's say, in a house where people disappeared, and then those people came back, should get to keep the house. I think that's just very unfair and not a valiant ideology to fight for. So I just felt no empathy for any of those characters, especially Carly. The way in which she was dealt was just, I found very bad, especially when Sam flew in with her dead body at the end, and she was kind of shed in this light as being a fallen hero. I felt none of that. I felt the exact opposite. I was more glad that she was gone, because I just felt nothing for her, and I disagreed with her every move. So my fifth point here is that everything seemed backward. Yes, John Walker as Captain America killed a man on video, but if you think about it, that man had just assisted in the murder of his best friend, and yet Walker is made out to be the villain. Carly, meanwhile, who is a terrorist, no matter what Sam says, tried to burn world leaders alive, and is treated as though her death is heroic. So again, going back to John Walker, he watched his best friend and military partner of many years die in front of him, and he just kind of lost it. And he went out and killed the man in front of a bunch of onlookers. Now, that was supposed to be the moment where everyone turned against John Walker, but honestly, it made me feel for him, and I'm not saying that what he did was right, not at all, but I feel as though it was a justified response to what just happened, because they just killed his friend, so why should the Flag Smashers get a pass? Well, John Walker didn't. Yes, John Walker did it as Captain America in the public light, but even Sam and Bucky were super willing to dismiss him and label him as the bad guy right away instead of coming to his aid and explaining the situation. And of course, John Walker lost almost everything because of this, and so that just made me feel bad for him and want to root for him more. Carly, meanwhile, like I said in my previous point, was treated as some sort of visionary who Falcon respected, but didn't want her to do what she was doing in the way she was doing it. But she also just tried to burn world leaders alive in those armored trucks, and yet Sam wants to treat her as if she was some future world leader or some revolutionary who should be put on a pedestal, when really she was willing to do the most extreme and terroristic things to get what she wanted. And so, for that reason, I just thought everything was backwards in this show. My sixth point I'll keep pretty brief, but I thought Sam Wilson's speech in the finale was very preachy and entitled. So his speech to the senators and world leaders just felt very forced by the writers, and something like an SJW would say right out of their mouth. You heard him say, "do better," and that's just a very SJW phrase, and it definitely felt super forced, and I just didn't like that at all. So my 7th point is Sharon Carter's total betrayal of character and arc. Now, I grew to like Sharon Carter in Captain America the Winter Soldier, mostly because that movie is just absolutely phenomenal. But her being the power broker, first of all, you could see coming a mile away. But I just didn't want to believe it was true, because I just felt like, even though, yes, she was punished for what she did in Civil War, I don't think her character would have given up on the U.S. and her people like that and become a full-on criminal. I think that being friends with Steve Rogers, seemingly the most incorruptible man, would have showed her that there's good in everyone and that she should just keep on fighting the good fight instead of turning to crime. And so that felt totally disconnected from what I thought her character would do, and I did not really like that at all. And finally, my 8th point is the direction this sets for the future of the MCU. Now, I talked about this in one of my previous videos about how Sam Wilson, Captain America, is starting the MCU down the path of all new, all different Marvel, which was the comic line where they had forced diversity just for the sake of diversity, and story was just thrown out the window. And so that scares me about this show, because I knew from that moment in Endgame, where Sam took the shield instead of Bucky, and something just felt wrong, that this was going to happen. And so that concerned me a lot. And really, I just do not like Sam Wilson as Captain America. As Falcon, he was great, but in this show, he just felt like a vessel for whatever nonsense the writers wanted to pull as far as woke messaging, and he just felt very scorned and entitled, and by the end of the show, Sam was kind of really getting on my nerves, and I really wish that wasn't the case, because as Falcon, especially in The Winter Soldier and Civil War, I loved Sam. He was a great character. But this show really turned me off of Sam and Bucky, to be honest. And it made me a fan of John Walker, and I want to see what they do with him next. But other than that, this show did not really deliver what I wanted. I really just wanted a return to Captain America the Winter Soldier style of the MCU. And, well, this might have felt like it production-wise and maybe even tone-wise, the messages behind this and the intent were really far off and very disappointing. So that's all I've got today. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you haven't already. Maybe even join the mailing list in my description. That would be a huge help, and it would keep you updated on what I'm doing. So, everyone have a good day, and thanks for watching and listening.